Well, the president is asking Congress for $3.7 billion to address the growing crisis created by a flood of illegal immigrants pouring in from Central America. He's going to meet with Governor Rick Perry of Texas between fundraisers down in Dallas and Austin later today, but the president still has no plans to visit the border. Texas Senator John Cornyn says the president should, and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. Senator, if the president were to go down and take a look at things with his own two eyes, it would be a real wake-up call for him, wouldn't it?
It sure would, and it would help him get outside of the bubble that all presidents get in. But this president seems just determined to be tone deaf in terms of the human consequences of the policies that he himself has caused. And he should go there. Bipartisan support for that, and we've had bipartisan members of Congress go down there and see it for themselves. And the president should see what we saw. And I think then he would perhaps reconsider his decision not to do anything to solve the problem, but rather than just to throw money at it.
Sure. I wonder if the meeting with Governor Perry and others is going to be awkward, because for the last couple of years, Governor Perry has asked for 1,000 National Guardsmen to go down to our southern border. And in fact, Mr. Perry, I believe, asked for that again just last week. What would be the matter? Tell me why the president does not send, let's say, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 National Guardsmen to our southern border.
Well, we know we need more federal law enforcement presence on the border, because right now the Border Patrol is changing diapers rather than interdicting drugs and other illegal immigration activities, human trafficking and the like. So, yeah, they need more manpower, and any federal source it can come from, I think, ought to be at least a temporary stopgap measure. But we also need to go back and change the law that was passed in 2008 that's allowed the federal government to release people pending their hearing before an immigration judge, because that is basically, rather than a notice to appear, it's been called by some of the professionals I've talked to a notice to disappear. And they never show back up, and so basically 90% of them are successful in evading enforcement.
You know, it's curious, Senator, because you're talking about the 2008 law that was passed overwhelmingly by Congress to protect victims of sexual trafficking from non-contiguous countries not Canada and also Mexico. I've heard so many people on the political left say, well, blame George Bush because he signed it. Well, if that were true, then all those people would have, flooded over the borders back in 2008. Isn't it because of the president and the executive action regarding the Dreamers, where people in those countries say, hey, if we show up, we're in?
It just shows how shrewd and really calculating the cartels and human smugglers are, because they found this loophole. And that became a big problem after 2012, when President Obama issued his deferred action announcement for the so-called Dreamers. Unfortunately for these children, that doesn't even apply to them, as the president acknowledges. So he admits that they are not legally present in the country, but refuses to take the necessary steps in order to deter people from starting out on this long, perilous journey up from Central America through Mexico in the hands of the drug cartels, where many of them are kidnapped, assaulted. Many of them just simply don't make it because they die from exposure. Sure. So this is not a humane situation. The president knows what to do. Secretary Johnson knows what to do, the head of Homeland Security. But apparently the president's decided to make a political decision rather than a policy decision that would solve the problem.
Sure. And of course, the thing that makes sense, and I know people from your party are saying we've got to secure the border and then we'll deal with everything else so that we don't keep the flood coming. But as we look at these pictures of these little kids in these detention centers or these facilities or whatever you want to call them, they're heartbreaking. We got to take care of them now that they're here, right?
Absolutely. I was down there a week ago in McAllen, talked to a young boy from Central America, 13 years old. We asked where his parents were. He said they're dead. Oh. So this is obviously very heartbreaking circumstances, but it is not humane for these kids to put them through this long, perilous journey in the hands of the drug cartels, who treat them as a commodity, just like they do drugs, weapons, and other items of contraband. So, this has really backfired, because it's given the president has given the impression that we're not going to enforce the law, and so that's basically been a huge magnet. And it's going to continue to get worse, Steve, before it gets better, unless the president steps up.
Well, let's see what happens today. Fingers crossed. Senator John Cornyn, thank you very much for joining us today from Washington, D.C.
Thanks,
sir.
Steve.
You bet.